Here we go. This is from Lady Here Before. This is Nepo Peace and Brothers of Destiny.
Yo, one of the best things about One Piece is how interconnected everything feels. Here's this one-off character that doesn't matter that much. Oh, he was actually on the Pirate King's crew. And as the story goes on, these connections become more and more direct. Nepo Peace is like the biggest discussion in One Piece right now. It seems as if every prominent One Piece character has some famous parent or comes from a prestigious lineage, whether it be Blackbeard, Shanks, Weevil, so many people.
Let me see. This is a month ago. Okay, I think I see what you're saying.
People want to discuss what this means for One Piece's themes of self-determination and hard work, but I look at it from a completely different angle. It's not blood that connects these people, but fate. Even for these, let's say, genetically gifted individuals, their parentage didn't get them to where they are. Their own will did. I've noticed there are a set of powerful characters from powerful families that have shaped the current landscape of the One Piece world through their influence. And over the course of 1,000 plus chapters, Oda has crafted a web between these characters that makes them inseparable. Their origins, their motivations, and most importantly, their fate are intertwined in a way that's almost impossible to put into words. I call them the Brothers of Destiny. While the ties between these characters have always been
I'm on video texting what I'm gonna do in the future. I'm on video texting I'm gonna do in the future. So we're gonna see if it lines up with some things I'm gonna
prominent. It wasn't until Elbaf that we saw just how deeply it runs, specifically with the introduction of Loki, Herold, and Rox. I've said it before, but Rox really is like the final piece that tied everything together. Obviously, we're gonna have to talk about his offspring later, but even before then, Rox's influence began with these two. When Rox and Herold first meet, they both just happen to be trying to escape from celestial dragons. But while Herold is there for diplomatic reasons, Rox is there to declare war. And from this, they form an unlikely friendship. But their difference in methodology slowly creates this wedge between them until they end up on completely opposite sides of the war. And smack dab in the middle of all of that is Loki. Loki gravitating towards Rox makes a lot of sense considering the differences between him and his father. Something that became painfully obvious to me and apparently everyone besides Herold is that Loki had no desires to be king, nor does he really have the qualities of one either. Loki was always more interested in the kind of freedom that pirates had, and this disconnect persisted throughout their entire relationship. Even through Herold's last breath, they could not see eye to eye. But what's interesting about Herold and Rox is, despite their disagreements, they reached a very similar end, both being taken over by Emu and essentially having to beg for death. But aside from Herold and Loki, Rox and everyone else I'm going to talk about today became truly inseparable in God Valley. I'm not exaggerating when I call this WrestleMania of the One Piece world, because
once in a lifetime, baby.
Everything happened here. But at its core, God Valley and really everything we've seen in Elbaf has been about fathers and their children. And there were three major fathers of God Valley. And while Roger had no idea that he was about to become a father, they all in their own way fought to protect their children. It's fairly common in stories to see children used as representations for hope of the future, and God Valley is no exception. The faces of baby Shamrocks, baby Shanks, and baby Teach are explicitly shown to highlight the innocence of these lives, despite being born into a massacre. And so much of the emotional impact of God Valley weighs upon the fragility of the lives of these newborns. One wrong move and it's over, no red hair. And speaking of the red-haired pair, let's talk about their chopped blonde pops. The first thing Shanks and Shamrock ever witnessed their
fuck, him being blind lost so much aura, bro. It was
father do.
Him being blind was just so, like, you understand why, given, you know, his mom. So his mom has the same sort of tonage of, you know, the hair color like Shanks and Shamrock does. But Garling having blonde hair does kind of suck.
Killed their mother. And on the surface, it's not even necessary. Garland could have easily taken Magnolia in as wife number 9, but I think for Garland, killing her had a very specific purpose. These two boys are the future of the Garland family, the next supreme commanders. I can't let them be weighed down by the feelings of humanity. And so Garland's first act as a father was a cold attempt to detach them from this humanity. And like much of Garland's God Valley performance, he failed, largely because of the
being in the Holy Land, living there in of itself seems to touch from humanity as it is, because you don't view them as like people in the Holy Land themselves, just being raised in that environment, you see yourself as superior than others, like literally.
Exploits of one young man, Monkey D. Dragon. In the current day, Dragon is a father himself, allegedly, but at the onset of God Valley, he was nothing but the unknown son of Garp. Vice Admiral Garp has made it his business to try to get every family member he has into the family business, but none of them ever followed in his footsteps, except Dragon. I like to imagine God Valley was one of Dragon's first missions because just look at him, bro. He's green as hell. And what is Dragon's first impressions of marine life? Lies, massacres, and demons. And this is where, just like baby Shanks, an immediate disconnect is formed between father and son. Garp is a hotshot marine, and even all the way back in God Valley, Garp had already been a hotshot for years. I imagine that by the time we get to God Valley, Garp has forgotten what it feels.
I wonder if it's into maybe a possibility theory that there's a disconnect from Blackbeard to Rocks based on God Valley.
It's like to be a rank and file soldier. The helplessness of witnessing evil and not being able to do anything about it. They're going through the exact same event, but the position that they're seeing it from is completely different. And for Dragon, this feeling of helplessness quickly becomes desperation. He felt complicit. He was out there to be a bodyguard for the Celestial Dragon's sick games. He had sinned, and protecting these babies was penance for his sins. Not even knowing that these babies are byproducts of this very system that he's grown to despise. This is such a good origin for Dragon in so many ways, because not only is his first action as a revolutionary to save newborns, the epitome of innocence, but the baby he saved was a Celestial Dragon himself. He doesn't even know he didn't save him from being oppressed. He saved him from being an oppressor. He reconnected Shanks to the humanity that is.
In the same way that you can argue that Sabo needed to be saved the nobles, because if he would save the nobles, and obviously Sabo had his own things, but let's say in the alternate timeline, if Dragon's out there, Sabo, let's say Ace leaves Sabo, and the Ace leaves, so does Luffy. Maybe Sabo doesn't leave, and then he wants to be morphed like his brother. You know, he's a noble. He has a certain view of people, and that view is an incorrect view in terms of, like, you know, seeing them as less than. All kind of stuff.
Father tried to detach from him, and though it is sad that Shamrock could not be saved in the same way, I'm willing to bet his brothers had some influence on him, and hopefully we see more of that in the future. Another interesting thing about these God Valley newborns, Shanks and Teach, before they were even old enough.
So mind you, Shanks had to pretend to be more like Shamrock in the future. Shanks' whole thing was that he was scornful of the lower world, and then he felt that someone was off with him, and then that's why he joined the Holy Knights for a period of time. Whereas, and then Shamrock was like, yeah, like, obviously, like, we are, like, he felt like someone was off from Rip with Shamrock. So
to comprehend anything, their lives were always diametrically opposed to one another. While Shanks' father is trying to make him comfortable with being cruel to others, Teach's father is busy trying to protect his family from cruelty themselves. One child who was born to be an enslaver, and another child who was born to be enslaved. And yet, despite their origins, today, Shanks is a protector of the innocent, and Blackbeard is the one that commits cruelty upon them, both being bastards to their father's legacy. Rocks was not the best guy ever. It's not like he never lied or cheated or stole from anyone, but he had honor and he had loyalty.
To be fair, I mean, he did get a lot of things from the Dayback fights. It's kind of hinted that he did kill the Admiral in a pretty underhanded way. And then also how he operated, like his crew, they were a notorious crew for not only worldwide, but also notorious for what they did to each other. They would fight each other, kill each other, that kind of shit, and he didn't really care.
That is not his legacy. His ability to form his own legacy was denied by Emu. All that's left are the stories of strength, grandiosity, and a sprinkle of villainy, which is what young Teach's dreams were likely shaped by. With children being an extension of their parents' will, and Blackbeard being a corruption of this concept, I don't think it's a mistake that Kuma ends up saving Blackbeard, and in the future we see how Blackbeard treats his daughter. And by the end of God Valley, every father has kind of made their decision on what exactly it is they want to protect. Garp realizing he's not only a father to Dragon, but to every Marine that was inspired to join by him. But what's interesting is between the three fathers, Garling, Rocks, and Garp, their sons all rejected whatever conclusion they came to and went in the exact opposite direction. And Roger doesn't know it yet, but he's gonna be in the same boat. It's no coincidence that the theme of fatherhood leads us directly to Whitebeard. With the obvious rivalry of Whitebeard and Roger, Shanks and Teach are once again put at odds, but this time for the sake of their adoptive fathers. The Fagarlands and the Davy clan, stripped of their history and now following their own paths. At this point in time, Shanks and Teach's connections to their respective families are complete opposites. Wherever he goes, it's as if they never existed, despite being one of the most powerful and influential families in history. I imagine as he followed Whitebeard around the world and learned more about the world and how connected it is, he started to feel a certain contempt for the world. My family's supposed to be in the middle of all of this. We were there when it was all created. This is my birthright. It's a very Celestial Dragon-esque mentality.
Also, he does have slaves, so he is kind of going on those paths. So yeah, I mean, he is really going on that Celestial Dragon route. You know, 'cause if he believes also he is someone, if the Davy clan was king of the world at one point in time, then he would believe that the world was also his birthright too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Meanwhile, Shanks, who was an actual celestial dragon, is faced with constant reminders of who his family is. For the first 10 years of his life, his father sent multiple holy knights to try to kidnap him back. He was literally hunted because of his blood, much like the Davy clan. In a way, Shanks can relate to Blackbeard's family maybe more than Blackbeard himself can. But also, we don't know what Teach's life was like pre-joining Whitebeard's crew. And while Shanks was most likely
in a way, it feels like what he's trying to get to in argues towards that Blackbeard's kind of like Doflamingo, where like, you know, there's a certain birthright that he had, but he lost that when he was younger, and so Blackbeard maybe feels the same way too.
Indifferent about Teach. I'm willing to bet that Teach envied Shanks in a way that Shanks probably wasn't even aware of. Seeing Shanks.
Give me a second, because my Chrome crashed again. Hey. Yo, 2 crashes in one stream. That's a long stream. Yo, what was that? 6 hours. My goodness. My goodness. For a new stream, huh?
Shanks is emblematic of the system that he was one day going to flip.
I may save the last watch through for What's Going Never for the video game later. I may do that. Yeah, I may do it for another day because it is getting late. Past that people want to stay
on his head, making that scar much more significant, a premonition of the Davy clan's return to prominence. So it makes sense that after receiving this scar and possibly a small lorddom from Blackbeard, Shanks sought to understand his history more, and it led him to seek power from the devil himself. It's also no coincidence that Shanks and Herold run into each other here, considering they're in very similar circumstances. In spite of everything the world government has done to them and the people around them, they've determined what they stand to gain from the world government is worth whatever discomfort or disgust they might feel. And what's interesting is, unlike every other father that we've talked about today, Garling is kind of a doting parent. At first I thought this was more of a positive trait, but the more I think about it, it's all about controlling his legacy. Every other father on this list, despite how they feel about their own lives, allowed their children to grow without them and develop their own identities. Garling would never allow his children to do that. You are a representative of me, and that is your purpose in the world. Even while in the home of the celestial dragon, Shanks still worked to undermine them, helping Fisher Tiger and many other slaves escape. Even while living under the celestial dragons, those flames of rebellion stoked by Roger and by Dragon still burn within him. Because of their motives and connections, Shanks and Teach are essentially at the center of this.
Yeah, you know what? I'll make this the last thing we watch tonight, and then I'll get to Blood the Dawnwalker, another stream for the finale, part 3.
Complicated web of destiny. Their influence touches everything and everyone. But for Shanks, no one has been more affected by his influence than Monkey D. Luffy. Before even meeting our main character, Shanks was unknowingly setting the stage for him. It cannot be a coincidence that the same man ends up with the Hito Hito no Mi model Nika and the Straw Hat all at the same time. And even when he had all these things in his possession,
he chose not to take the fruit.
It's like they never belonged to him. He was just the vehicle that these objects used to reach their rightful owner. I think at some point Shanks realized he could never be the guy, but he could still make his mark through the next generation. So he held.
I feel like there's something particular about Joy Boy that Luffy as a person was able to tap into, but nobody else could. Not Roger, not Shanks, not like whatever it is, we'll find out. But I think that's the reason why.
He held on to the straw.
To be fair, Shanks does give the hat to Luffy because he says the words that Roger says. So
he held on to all the knowledge that he had gained over the years, knowing that one day it would come in handy when the guy showed up. And this chosen one was the last thing he expected.
That's right, baby.
I and many others still believe he was looking for Ace, someone he'd never met but still felt a.
But I feel like Ace was. I can see why folks say Ace, but I don't think it was
familiar.
Like I think Ace was an option. Like. I think that Shanks was also some. Fuck, it's his theory video. But I've done videos in the past talk about this too, where essentially speaking, across the entire planet, low key, all these people that will be Joy Boy candidates. Ace, I think, is a Joy Boy candidate. The right person to fulfill whatever's going on in God Valley. Kaido, I think, was also a Joy Boy candidate, right? Shanks, I think, is also a Joy Boy candidate. The same for Goldie Roger. The same for, you could argue, Bartholomew Kuma. There are folks that are across the world you could argue are Joy Boy candidates. But Luffy is the closest to one to or is the Joy Boy candidate that people have been waiting for. He's the one. All right, that's what I think is the case here. Where Luffy is that Joy Boy candidate in earnest.
Connection to, and likely
you could maybe argue Dragon too in a way is the Joy Boy candidate, but nah.
Yet another responsibility he was willing to shoulder. As a child of celestial dragons and the Pirate King, Shanks was under immense pressure to excel.
Yeah,
Buggy talks about himself.
Sense.
The opinion amongst Roger's
Then yeah, you gotta argue also a Joy Boy candidate as well.
crew was Shanks is the de facto next Pirate King. I bet Shanks felt like Ace was the only person that could ever understand having that amount of pressure on you from birth, especially as it pertains to Roger and the title of Pirate King. And he was never able to truly establish that relationship, but he found another little brother.
Usopp sucks? No, Prince. Leroy sucks? No, they don't suck. They don't get enough time. That's two different things.
One who shared no relation to Roger.
Chad sucks. Chopper kind of sucks now. It is what it is. But he's getting better. But like Oreo? No.
At all, but captured everything he stood for. After learning about God Valley, Shanks and Luffy's meeting feels even more fateful, not only because of the spirit of Roger, but also the spirit of Dragon. Before Shanks was even old enough to remember, one man saved his life solely because it was the right thing to do. And decades later, Shanks, spurred on by that same kindness, saves that man's son. One seemingly isolated moment of altruism ended up protecting the thing Dragon cares about the most. So basically, by the transitive property, Dragon's not a deadbeat. But let's go back to
at the same time though, who's your father figure? Luffy Shanks or Dragon? Come on, let's be real here. Let's be real here.
Ace is very important to this whole concept. He's at the center of everything, almost as much as Luffy. He's the one that's most direct in the hatred of his father. Unlike Blackbeard, who had his mother, Ace had no one to tell him positive stories of his father. Garp for damn sure wasn't doing it. Speaking of Garp, that's another father figure that Ace developed an adversarial relationship with, a sentiment that he shares with Luffy. They love their grandfather, but there is a bit of resentment there, and that's consistent through all the characters that I've talked about in this video. That adversarial nature consistently sends young men out to sea. They've all got a chip on their shoulder and they've all got something to prove. And Ace, the one with the biggest chip on his shoulder, allowed it to drag him down, never truly reaching his full potential. And I think this is...
If you want to view Shanks as the father figure to Luffy he went to sea because of Shanks. And what's the point? The point is to beat Shanks. Like he wanted to... The reason why he started to sea to be Pirate King is to what? It's to prove to Shanks that he has a crew better than his crew to be Pirate King.
Largely because, unlike Dragon or Shanks, his anger is misplaced. Roger never once wronged Ace, and in fact, Roger and Ace were kindred spirits. The conversation that Yamato and Ace have about Roger, without Ace even knowing it's about Roger, is one of the most tragic scenes in the entire story. Because without either of them knowing, Yamato's telling Ace exactly where he went wrong in life. Ace and Roger would have gotten along perfectly. Their values and their personalities were just alike.
Because Yamato says all about Roger, or he reads that book, and then Ray says, "Yeah, like one day I like to meet that man because they jive." But that man's his dad.
And this is cemented even further when Ace meets Buggy and Shanks. Without even knowing it, he meets two fellow sons of Roger, and the connection is instant. Buggy hates Luffy, but he instantly loved Ace. Almost like whether they knew it or not, they were always meant to be family. Which brings me back to Blackbeard. Everything we've learned about Rox and Roger makes the Blackbeard versus Ace dynamic more interesting because they are polar opposites all the way down to their understandings of their fathers. Even both being adopted by Whitebeard, the father of the ocean that will take in any lost son of the sea. And despite hating his father, Ace carried his will in his own way. He honored the values he inherited from both his fathers. Roger and Whitebeard would both be proud of Ace and the way he lived. His fellow Whitebeard adoptee, on the other hand, is the shame of both of his fathers, despite probably admiring Rox quite a bit. But when we talk about what he inherited from Rox, it definitely wasn't his virtues. He really only inherited the griminess. Rox would be ashamed of his progeny, and Whitebeard was ashamed all the way to his grave. Marineford is even cooler with all this knowledge as well. It's another instance of fate bringing all these brothers back together on different sides of another giant conflict. And the roles they play in that war reflect the roles that play within their little fraternity. Shanks being the protector, never the main focus, but a guiding force for all of his brothers that need him.
Yes, at least he gets it. At least people get it. He is the guiding force. He is the one that's the balancer. He is the one that is trying to regulate and make sure that things are prepared correctly for the right person, Luffy.
Each being the embodiment of greed, forcefully taking what he wants from anyone, including his family. Despite being a bastardization of both his fathers, he benefits the most from their existence, not by carrying their wills, but by taking it by force. And then we have Luffy and Ace, in the middle of it all, the light that the rest of them revolve around. It makes sense the battle between these two was called the darkness versus the sun. Luffy and Blackbeard's dynamic is interesting because it might just be the most antagonistic out of all of them, which is saying a lot considering one of them has literally been Blackbeard's op since his birth. But from their first meeting, it's as if these two were never meant to like each other. And throughout all of their interactions, they constantly find themselves at odds with one another, almost always unintentionally. From Jaya to Impel Down to Dressrosa, even modern day events with Garp and Pudding. Blackbeard and Luffy are constant antagonistic forces in each other's lives.
It's the idea of domination. That's a crazy pause. I pause on. The ideas of domination and freedom are also things that you kind of see. See, like, one thing is that you have to keep in mind is that, like, Brox was, I think, someone that also valued, like, domination. He valued domination. He also valued freedom too, but also he wanted domination. He wanted to, that's why he put him on Emu in the first place. But Blackbeard is someone that embodies that to another level about the ideas of domination, right? This is something that Emu brings up about, you know, Joy Boy too, or he brings it to Loki as well, the idea of domination, right? That is a quintessential idea. It's like, okay, what does it mean to be king of the pirates? What does it mean to rule? What does it mean to lead? And you can see how, like, Luffy, obviously you see it play out in various ways when it comes to what their taste of food is, how they view certain situations. But I think at its core, it's kind of similar to that idea too.
And I'd say it's mainly because it's Luffy's nature to give just as much as it's Teach's nature to take. And these two natures will always be at odds with one another. It is somewhat reminiscent of Rock's and Roger's little spats, but there was some underlying respect there regardless of their differences. I don't think either of these niggas respect each other even a little bit. It's hard to tell when Blackbeard became this way. It's possible that by the time he joins Whitebeard, he already has things loosely planned out, or he developed this ambition as he grew and learned more about the world. Either way, over the years, Blackbeard has allowed for his own corruption, all for the sake of following in the footsteps of Davy Jones and, of course, Rox. Funnily enough, the only brother that knows Rox intimately is Loki. It makes me curious to see how Loki will react to Blackbeard. Will he see it as his destiny to align with Blackbeard since he missed his chance with Rox? Or will he view Teach as the bastard that he is? Especially considering Loki's relationship to Shanks, the man with the most detestable father here ended up a force for good, and Loki hates him, views him as a coward. So it makes sense that the character who is the antithesis to everything Shanks is would appeal to the Lokester a bit. Not to mention the dynamics between their three fathers, the camaraderie between Rox and Herold would persist, and the hatred of the Fagarlands and the Celestial Dragons continues on through their feud with Shanks. We remember what Shanks' father did to Rox. They might both want a little get back for that. And unsurprisingly, the one guy who accidentally ends up in contact with all these people despite never seeking any of them out, our main character, Monkey D. Luffy. Through all the characters we've talked about, and even before then, as far back as the first world, these characters have taken action and pushed their cause forward. Whether it be Rox, Roger, Dragon, Joy Boy, Davy Jones, all these people of the past, all these fathers have had their dreams entrusted to him. His elder brothers who have protected him up to this point, even those who have been antagonistic towards him, I'm willing to bet their will flows through him all the same. Every action taken by others created his opportunity and his destiny. He is the end product of all of their dreams, and that puts him in direct opposition with the man hell-bent on stealing all of their destinies from them. That final battle between Luffy and Blackbeard is gonna feed families, man. But yeah, man, that's all I got for y'all boys today. Let me know what you think about this.
Okay, I like his take on this. The idea of the father, like the ideas of the fathers that spread from, and how they've been like shifted and warped and have been flipped in their heads in many respects. You can see how like also affects the nature. There is an idea that you kind of get. Man, I wish I had this video, but it was an older video, or an older take on the ideas of good and evil, where they're not necessarily evil and good, but it's about nature, right? At times, BB does have a pretty good nature, but for the most part, he's a bad-natured person. Luffy's the reverse. At times, he's very selfish. He's very, 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 very mal-mannered. He's almost greedy at times, too. It's fucking weird. But then he's not a hero, as you would say. But his nature is that of a good person. And so a lot of times, it does boil down to nature. I don't know if the nature of people like Rox, or people like Shanks, or people like Kaido or Ace or Roger, you can argue other Joy candidates, is the right nature that is supposed to be whatever's going to happen on God Valley, or not God Valley, on Laugh Tale, whatever they're waiting for that's going to be very important there. But hey, appreciate you for the $2, Anime. But that is a very important idea about nature too. Blackbeard embodies an authentic pirate. I love it. He does in many respects. I don't know if the pirates did slaves like that, but he does in many respects.
Little brother.
Ace never gave Roger a chance and believed his life will always be in the shadows, which makes Blackbeard controlling the shadows takes Rock's status and face value and his virtues. Not his virtues. I mean, oh, okay, I got you. Oh, not his virtues. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so which makes Blackbeard controlling shadows takes Rock's status, face value, and not his virtues. Yes.
Put it in the comments below and comment for turn.
The problem though is that we don't know how much of Rock's he understands, right? We know that his mom was there for a period of time, but we don't know if he understood his father completely the way, because I think he was like 1 year old at that point in time. And we don't know what his mom taught him after the fact, but his virtues may have been superseded by his desire to be someone like Davy D. Jones. But I guess the will of Davy D. Jones would also be important here too, depending on how he would work out. Is Davy D. Jones like Joy Boy? I mean, is Davy D. Jones like what Blackbeard is now, right?
If you made it to the end, just confuse all the niggas that didn't make it here. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, man, I'm gone.
Good video. I like the Homeboy Star process. I do. That was well thought out, well researched. He did a lot of work putting it together. Good stuff. For real. Good stuff. Okay. Get the fuck out of here. And that's it, right? We are done. Yeah, we're done.